Hey guys, it's BlockchainBrad, and today I'm very honoured to speak with Unibright once again. We have the CTO and the CEO in the hot seat, and they are none other than Stefan Schmidt and Marten Jung. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here tonight to discuss and explore what you've been doing with Unibright since we last spoke.
Yeah, hi Bradley, hi everyone. Thanks for having us again. It's a pleasure, and I guess it's more than half a year ago we spoke, and we are very keen on giving you any updates.
Absolutely. Let's get down into the crux of what you've been doing. You stand for essentially a unified framework for blockchain business, and I really want to get down into those terms again. Let's talk about what you mean by blockchain business. What exactly is it, and how does it differ from normal business?
Yeah, first of all, the idea of Unibright is to bring enterprises to blockchain adoption, or put it in other terms, helping enterprises to make use of blockchain. And that's why we came up with the Unibright Framework that addresses the pain points companies have. Like they need developers to code smart contracts, which we take away with our framework. We have templates that address the most common use cases companies have. We have the connector. We've got this great integration perspective. We allow off-chain systems to be integrated to a blockchain. That's extremely important to companies. And we've got this single point of monitoring where we see in one cockpit the whole business process that is going on in the enterprise.
Right. So obviously you have systems in place, and we'll go through them step by step so that we can let the audience or refresh their understanding of those key components. But also let's talk about the framework, because you talk about this, as quite a general term. But what do you mean by framework? What does Unibright encapsulate in that term?
A framework is a technical surrounding a frame where you can enable different processes. We see with every new technology coming, so we've been doing this IT stuff and developing and consulting for nearly 20 years now, we see that with every new technology, the questions arising from enterprise side somehow are the same. So every new technology promises to be the one solution for all and to be the perfect solution, and everything will adapt just to this new technology. But still, companies and big enterprises have existing systems, and they have employees that can do something very good and perhaps other things not that good. So what we did was to address these pain points Marten mentioned that occur every time when a new technology arises, and to bring them together with blockchain. So it's about development, it's about integration, it's about monitoring, and that's why we do not offer one product that just solves all, but we need a framework to address the different parts of a solution and the different parts of a business lifecycle.
Right. So before we break down that series of products essentially and that service that you offer, let's talk about the relationship between blockchain. Are you a blockchain by design, or are in fact you focused on being the technology that can facilitate blockchain business and thus be agnostic as a service and product?
Yeah, we are extremely agnostic. We are the one product that can help companies to make use of different blockchains. Because to be honest, there are so many blockchain protocols, and some are good for different use cases and others are suitable for other use cases. And that's why we are blockchain agnostic. So we are open to new blockchains emerging and others disappearing. It's just the idea of helping companies to make use of the technology, of the features every blockchain protocol offers, like trustless trust, like decentralized consensus, and so on, to make business processes that make use of these features all blockchain protocols share.
And so Marten, sorry to interrupt, but in that respect, can you give us some examples of the kind of blockchains that you've already built your technology to suit? I remember reading about some of the permission systems and also the open public systems as well. Have you done specific tests and assessments on preferred blockchains, or is it just very generic?
Yeah, from a historical perspective, we started with Ethereum. And with our demo that went live 2 weeks ago, Stefan presented in Belgrade on a meetup, we showed how we design workflows, and then the smart contract that got generated automatically were Ethereum smart contracts. So we started with Ethereum and with Hyperledger for permission blockchains. And now we are looking into other solutions too. We partnered up with Nem.io because they've got this great smart asset approach. And it's something we are looking into. So Nem will be one of our next targets, as well as EOS.
Right.
But these are just the 4 we selected because we found them most suitable at the moment, or a few months ago. But still, we look at the markets and see which protocols appear, and we will adopt as we go.
I see. Well, Stefan, can you talk us through some of the components? Obviously, it goes from the workflow designer all the way through. You have the explorer, the connector, and also you have the lifecycle manager. So talk us through those components, just very, in a nutshell, why each of those parts are fundamental to the overall architecture that is Unibright.
Yeah, I think from the blockchain perspectives, it's important to know that we're still living in a world of promises. So there are many protocols around and others to come up, but perhaps they will never be really productive, or they will disappear again. So for us, it's important to abstract from the actual implementation, and that's what the 4 tools are for. So I can go through them quite quickly.
Okay.
The overall goal is to design a business process visually without having to write one single line of code for a specific blockchain. So with the workflow designer, you visually design a specific process, like an approval process or like a tracing process, just by drawing circles and rectangles on a drawboard and connecting them and adding some attributes. Mm-hmm. With a lifecycle manager, this visual definition is transformed into whatever blockchain technology, for example, Ethereum smart contracts written in Solidity. And the lifecycle manager also takes care of publishing them into the blockchain and holding the addresses so you can access them later. Mm-hmm. The connector, our third tool, connects this blockchain part that we just generated with existing systems that have nothing to do with blockchain at all, like big ERP systems within a company, maybe from SAP or IBM or Microsoft or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then our explorer is the part where we put all these information together and can monitor the current state of a smart contract and bring it together with information from the off-chain systems. So when you use the Unibright framework for a complete business process, we also showed that in a demo walkthrough on our website, then you can completely work on a level where you don't have to read or write one single line of code, but just stay on a high process level, and the rest is done automatically by Unibright.
Right. Okay. So obviously you've thought about the end-to-end process, but I wanted to talk to you guys about some sort of analogy, perhaps that can help the audience understand more so what you do in terms of business. So I wanted to use the analogy of an auto shop. We did talk about this last interview, so I want to use that again. Now, you guys would know also the I think it's called the Autobahn, is that right? Or that well-known strip of highway that's,
The Autobahn, yeah.
The Autobahn. Yeah, so if we could use the analogy of vehicles, of an auto shop, of mechanics, I wanted to go there and try and use that as some way of extrapolating what exactly you do if someone arrived with their vehicle or needed perhaps you to construct one.
Okay, let me get into this picture. Let me see.
In the automotive section, of course, you could talk about platforms if you mean that. Or
right.
Do you want to have a specific use case for that industry? What are you looking
Well, let's say, for example, I'm just a generic business. Let's not worry about the industry for a moment. For the public, let's try and talk about how we could use the analogy that you provide for as the auto shop, essentially, as the toolkit. You have all the different things, and people are arriving. They may not be arriving in a car at all. But essentially, what is it that you do? If we can try and use these analogies to really...
Okay. Then we could imagine that you want to create a completely new car. Mm-hmm. And instead of starting from scratch, it would be good to have a look at the market, which basic platforms already exist. So when you go for different car manufacturers, you will know that although a different logo is put on the car, most of them share the same components and the same platform. So Unibright in that sense would help you to pick the right platform and to tell you how you have to integrate existing components on that platform so that finally it turns out to be a great car you can sit in and drive at the most beautiful places of the world. Okay,
well, that's a good way of explaining it. So let's talk about why, in that great analogy, we'll take that through onto the Autobahn for a moment. Now, obviously, you're letting me drive out a better car or indeed, you're facilitated through your products for me to be able to have a car. But when I get onto the Autobahn, I imagine I want to have better productivity, better efficiency, better performance. So for a business, is that what you provide? And if you do, can you tell us how?
Yeah, from the framework idea we've been talking about, there are a few topics we can address here, that being blockchain agnostic. So while you are driving, you may feel like your car isn't suitable anymore because the autobahn has changed, so to say. It's a, I don't know, or a big rain started or something. You have to modify your car, and with our framework, we could just push a few buttons, and then the car would be changed in a way. New parts get into it, but the car as a concept still goes on. So you can change it on the fly without you caring about all the technical details. You just keep your ideas in line, what you want to have your car or how you want to have it look like, and we can adopt it, so to say, to the new environment.
Yeah, perhaps in one country the autobahns are like 4 meters wide, and in another country they are like only 2.5 meters. So your basic idea of a car, like it has to be comfortable, and I want it to be in red, and the sound system should be really great. All these attributes stay the same, but the car that is generated based on components that are already there is manufactured automatically, so to say, by a big
right. Well, perfect segue as well, Stefan, because you said, that manufactured. So I wanted to ask you both whether you or not you have patented technology, proprietary technology that is owned and designed and protected by Unibright.
Yeah, we've got these. This is from a historical perspective. Our integration platform, our Unibright connector, has been working productively since 2011. And when we built it, it was a closed environment. It's not open source. It's a product we sold to German banks, for example, and it's something that is protected. And that's why we have some parts of the framework that are not available for open source access. But everything else, like the tools we're working on now,
especially the templates
and the templates,
the base contracts,
will be available on GitHub or are in parts already. And we're thinking on this because it's a great opportunity to get the community into. So we started with like 12 templates for the most common use cases our customers have, like approval processes, tracing processes, asset lifecycle, and so on, things we have today. But there are so many more opportunities we can come up with, and we can have them in templates, and people outside of Unibright can think of these templates and we can integrate them. And this is a perfect use case for open source software. So we can open ourselves, can open up the framework, and that's the idea of a framework, and can extend it and can have it extended by other people outside of Unibright.
Right. Well, you mentioned before as well, Marten, that you have a demo. Can you talk us through, the stage you're at with regard to the development? Obviously, you're moving well and truly towards the application stage, the integration into mainstream business, but you're ways ahead from achieving that into 220, I suspect. So talk us through the position you're at now.
Yeah. When we look at our roadmap, then we are in the position that we are well ahead of our roadmap, a few weeks. We've got our demo out, so everyone can register and use the demo and can design processes, can generate smart contracts, and even can connect them, can talk to them via email and other connectors. And looking at the roadmap, companies can use the framework as it is. And that's what we are doing at the moment, talking to customers that want to get their feet wet with blockchain technology and want to do first real-life project with us.
Right. Well, let's talk about the question of why. Now, obviously, and we'll get into this later with comparisons, but obviously you want to present the case that Unibright is the best solution for enterprise and for businesses globally. But why, essentially, from a business point of view, would they use you? Moving beyond the autobahn and the analogy of the car, why specifically, though, does a business need to use blockchain technology at all?
Okay, of course, there are a lot of answers. I think I'll give you one that we often hear from our customers. Stefan can give you others. And the one thing that comes into my mind first is the integration perspective. Because when we talk to Lufthansa or to the big German reinsurance company, to others, they all have the feeling like they are extremely far away from blockchain. They are living in this centralized world. They have their systems, their real huge systems that grew up over years and years. And then they want to have this new technology integrated somehow. So for them, it's like having 99% in the old world and now getting the new world, the blockchain, into it at least a bit. And then it's so much about integration from a technical perspective, how to connect those systems, but from a process level too, like thinking about decentralized consensus and what can we do with it, what features are offered by it, and how we can reconnect it to our business processes at the moment. this whole integration thing is something we addressed explicitly with our Unibright connector from a technical perspective and with our tools from business process level, so we can build processes that use both words. That's what I think we are, one of the absolutely best approaches to use. That's the thing I think of first.
Right. And Stefan, what about you? In terms of money, let's go there for a moment. Let's talk about dollars. Is it advantageous economically to adopt this for a business?
Well, I think time will tell a little bit if you are able to look more on projects that were in the past. So it's always hard to foresee the future. I think with new technology, you always have to keep in mind that it works in iterations. So it might be that in some months or years from now, we notice that right now we perhaps have been in the first or second iteration of, let's not call it blockchain, but distributed ledger or decentralized consensus. And that the real platforms we are working on are still about to evolve. So right now, given the adoption as it is, it's really hard to put in numbers here what blockchain could do in bazillion of dollars. But I think it's important that the power of the concept is there, and it cannot be discussed away. It's proven by itself, so to say.
Right. Well, Marten, let's or Stefan.
That's the most important thing: to wait for the right iteration to make a business out of it.
Okay. Well, Stefan, I'm going to push you a little bit further on this one, because you mentioned, both of you before, gentlemen, that there's a big focus and push for building out the business components because you're integrating in that sphere. So let's say, for example, I'm a business considering Unibright as opposed to others. Pitch me on the fundamental value in terms of the economy, the productivity. How are you going to show that? Because that spiel you just presented to me wouldn't really convince me. If you said, time will tell. Can you do any more than that? Have you done any testing or anything beyond that to really showcase what you actually can do for business?
Of course, you were asking about dollars, so that's what I was referring to.
Yeah, but I mean, businesses will want to hear that.
Yeah, okay, then we are at the point. I think there's a common misunderstanding of what a product or a framework is and what consulting services are. So when you ask me to pitch the Unibright framework, then I would consider that you already know what blockchain is. You already know that you want to make use of blockchain, and you screened the market and you saw like 10 vendors and one of them is Unibright. And then I would do the pitch like Marten did. With us, you don't have to code, you don't have to find developers, you don't have to decide for a specific implementation now, but can stick to the process and integrate your system. And then I think you will find no competitor who delivers all that. But
sure, but once again, as a business, how do we move beyond that to evidence productivity? In a numerical sense, are you not yet able to do that? Is that still something ahead?
No, the main point is that a company does not approach us with having 10 competitors and asking us why we are the best one. That's not the case. The case is they're approaching us, please explain us why should we use blockchain and how can Unibright help? So
respectfully though, Stefan, let's not use comparisons for a moment. Let's just say that a company is asking you to evidence the economy of your service and your products. When we talk about economy, we're talking about cost savings. So what I'm asking is, from a position of a business, can you yet evidence that through some sort of sample, through some sort of testing?
Yeah,
per template, of course we could. So it would be the basic argumentation, like having a manually driven process that uses, like, say, half an hour of 2 employees per day, and replacing that by an automatically driven smart contract process where the smart contract negotiate themselves. So you can calculate on how much you can save on not having these employees doing the manual work, but doing the smart contract for itself.
Okay, well, thanks for doing that. Has there been any audits done yet? Because I ask you this because other companies currently that are utilizing blockchain have done audits when they've done assessments where they've done work for different companies, or they've done it even in government audits done to make sure that there is an element of productivity. Have you done anything like that before, where there's been an audit of your product in its, in application?
We got someone in the team who is extremely into testing and auditing, and there's no standard level of auditing at the moment we can present, because we are still in the way of doing it. But it's something we pointed out that we will have our smart contracts and the templates audited. Yeah, but it's something that isn't so easily done because there aren't any standards out there.
We have to build them by ourselves.
Yeah, we are somehow building the standards on what makes a good smart contract and how should the template look like. It's a very technical question, or how can you prove that some code or fragments you generate are of one quality or come along with one standard. This is something, it's not something you can just put onto your product and say, now we are audited.
No, the problem is that the external auditor would need to have all the know-how that we just built. And that's why I know that you are, or I noticed that you are pushing for short answers, but the sad thing is that answers can't be short because it's a bigger picture. And that's why I come back to these iterations again. Right now, we're in the first iteration where we can have some smart contracts and some programming languages out. But to have external auditing and something like a regulatory norm to tell how good is a blockchain solution, we are years away from that. Because way more companies like Unibright who do something, so you can actually build up an auditing on that.
Right. Well, you've made it clear that you're years away from having that auditing. But what I will make the point is there are companies out there that are already conducting auditing processes with real governments utilizing blockchain. That's the premise. You know, that's where I was going with that. But if we could talk now about proof of revenue as well, because obviously there's suggestions from different companies right now that they can prove revenue currently. Is that something that Unibright can do, or is that something you're planning to be able to do when you can implement this?
Yeah, we can do this. We've got, let's say, some building blocks we sell with our consulting services. Like we have initial workshops we sell for getting companies to think about blockchain first. We've got bigger packages that include our Unibright Framework.
To do a proof of concept.
To do a proof of concept, or the bigger ones for companies that are really wanting to use it. Yes, there is some small amount of revenue, and there will be probably some more. I wanted to go back 2 questions to the thing you asked for, like talking about numbers and how the economical question, how companies can save money by using Unibright. I think the question isn't big enough. I think you have to think about how can companies save money with using blockchain technology.
Exactly.
There's this aspect too. Like you have to think about, it's not a direct saving, perhaps. If you come up with things like there might be some legal push to say it's not okay to have personal data in centralized systems any longer. This might happen in a few years. Or we have a customer in the, let's say they're making drinks, and they're making beers, and they want to prove that they are very transparent. So they can't use a centralized system. They come up with the idea of using a decentralized one, a blockchain, where they can prove their whole production process to their customers. It's just something that doesn't come with a saving in the first place.
It costs money.
It costs money in the first place, but in the long run, somehow, whether you have to do it because you're pushed legally, or you want to do it because you then have an advantage against your competitor because you are more transparent. It's with all new technology. In the first place, of course, they cost money, and it's hard to think about them. But after a few years, when everyone uses them, then you have to use them, and then the companies that use them first are the fastest movers. So it's not so easy and just.
It's the wrong question. No
numbers.
You know, respectfully, you know, there is no wrong question. These are just questions we're posing to try and understand Unibright better. But in this respect, you know, what I'm trying to unpack is from the business perspective, from those who are entering, perhaps not understanding what blockchain can do for their business, is they are still going to ask those fundamental questions of economic gain or economic benefit. So once again, I think it's beholden or behooves me to ask those questions because they do want to know that. But if we talk about
the only thing that we want to point out, it's not the first question that we are asked. So it's just our experience so far. The question is not, okay, I understood everything about blockchain. I understood everything about Unibright. So what can I save? No, the question is, why should we use blockchain and where, and how can Unibright help? So that of course, your questions are not wrong, but it's not the main pain point that we have the feeling we have to address with our consulting services, saving money. Like perhaps to do that retrospective again with virtualization. So in the beginning, when you went into virtualization and a company would have asked you, what can I save with that? Then the answer would be, you can't say something with that right now. It just costs money because cloud storage is so expensive, bandwidth is so expensive. But 3 years from then, of course, they start to save money. So so that's not the first question. That's the way how I want to put it.
Sure. Well, gentlemen, let's talk now about your partners. You have some key ones. Microsoft is one example. Talk us through what these partners actually do. Is it a reciprocal benefit for both you and the partners? Have you been building out your partners since we last spoke? And once again, what kind of value do each of these partners bring to build out Unibright?
Yeah. Microsoft is some kind of a hybrid partner. Of course, most of our tools are bound to Microsoft technology. They are built on the Azure framework, for example. But apart from this, we did workshop with Microsoft, approaching customers here in Germany. So we're working on getting blockchain out together to customers. And then there are some, let's say, hosting partner, because there are companies that use our integration part, the Unibright connector, and some parts need to be hosted, and then they are some technology partner too. So they are very hybrid, I guess.
Right. Okay. What about other companies? For example, R3, I noticed that's in the list as well. Are you planning on making more connections to other permissioned systems like R3? And, because they're a big deal, with regard to banking, are you looking at Quorum, for example, JP Morgan and the likes?
Yes, of course. I think we could go through every partner one by one, of course. This would take a little time. And from there, you also would have to ask them from their perspective, how they see the partnership. I think the main point is that we have to build ecosystems around the single company. So for a framework like Unibright, being blockchain agnostic, it's just not enough to say, yes, we can generate code in Solidity and for Hyperledger, and that's it. Because perhaps there are industries or use cases where you where you need completely different features. So we have been looking into many protocols. Some of them lead to official partnerships, like recently with Tola, or perhaps the most prominent, the NEM thing. But we cannot now be an exclusive NEM partner and tell every customer they should only use NEM, because perhaps there are use cases where other protocols are better. Right. So yes, we will look into more partnerships. We will always screen the market for promising new protocols, but we will also always take it from a real implementation perspective and see how far are these protocols in the end, and how far is the promising part and how far is the actual implementation part. And for example, NEM is something that is really good at the implementation part, because they're really doing something and you can really use their protocol already.
Right. Well, gentlemen, one of the tough questions I wanted to pose to you now, obviously you're facing, a lot of volatility in the crypto space right now. A lot of questions are asked about the needs for tokens to even exist. Can you tell us, fundamentally and in a nutshell, why do you even need to have a token, given that you are enterprise-centric and you're really focused on products and services internally? You're not your own blockchain platform by any means. Why do you need to have a token?
First of all, the token, like we say from the very beginning, should be seen as a voucher. So it's a pre-financing instrument to enable a new company with a great idea with funds, so they can pay developers and really bring something forward. Another approach would have been to talk to a local bank or do a Kickstarter project. And we decided to do a token launch and give out a utility token that people can buy now and sell to enterprises that will make use of the framework later. That's
right. And Marten, what do you say to the conjecture or the discussion at the moment with regard to security versus utility? It's important we ask this because fundamentally the functionality, or what we see is the way things play out in crypto, is this pseudo security by default, because of the way people treat it. And that's not to say that legally you're not a utility, because clearly you've gone through those processes. But could you just comment on what we see and how tokens are treated initially through these ICOs, and if it concerns you at all?
Okay, just you said that legally we are not a utility, but of course we are.
Well, my apologies. I meant to say legally you're recognized as a utility. But again, once again, is to hark back to the security itself. Now, we see these things functioning like securities. Is that something that concerns you?
Yeah, of course it concerned us during the ICO and before the ICO, and that's why we stated that we are a utility token, but still we got the feeling that there are some people that have seen us as a trading instrument, so to say, but it's nothing that was bound to Unibright. I guess the whole space last year or the last month too was about speculation. There were a lot of fantasies in some projects, and we always try to put out the argument that we are a utility, and it's just we need our token as an instrument to use our framework. So it's just an entry fee you need to pay. You put in some tokens in the framework, and then you get some share of the framework. You get some share of our connector, of our tools, you can use it. It's just a very elegant way of getting all this invoicing away. We did manually before. You can have it all done by utility token. But you're completely right. Still, it's somehow out of our hands that there's this market, this duality of the token, that it is seen and traded as a cryptocurrency too. But I guess this holds true for most of the utility tokens. And it's something that, yeah, it can be talked about, but it's nothing that can be taken away, I guess.
And the only thing we can affect is that we really provide the utility the voucher is for. So of course, if we only sell a token and tell people it will be used as a voucher for a future framework, and then we just skip it, then the voucher will never be placed in a framework. So that's why we so dedicated ourselves concerning our roadmap for bringing a software product ready.
Right.
And I think from that point, it is clear why you need a voucher to use it.
Just one small addition, sorry.
Sure.
That's why we came up with the idea to extend our website a bit. So we'll have a small region on our website where we exactly show how many tokens are locked in the framework.
So used as a voucher.
Used as a voucher by customers. We will come up with this.
So how will you be able to differentiate with that between for those who speculate? Because how will you remove the equation of speculation, Marten, from the imperative of using these tokens? Will it eventually go away as you become more and more of an overt utility in the ecosystem that you're building and major businesses integrate?
That's what we are convinced of. With the broader use of blockchain technology, of course, more and more tokens will go to the framework by customers buying them and using them for using our product.
But perhaps it's important to point that out. Of course, we are able to distinguish between the tokens that are used as voucher and those for, I don't know, whatever reason, because those are used as a voucher have to be locked inside the platform. So we exactly know how many tokens are locked for using the framework. And that's what Marten said, that one we want to show to the public as well. Of course, it makes more sense when the product is ready than just by having a demo out. But from you will see that more and more vouchers are getting into the platform to make use of it.
Right. Can you talk us through also from an enterprise perspective, how can you convince them to make that transition into the token itself? Because obviously they come from the fiat world, used to transacting in common day currencies. How do you sort of incentivize this transition?
It's not so hard at all as people put it. I think this again shows that many people have a pure or mainly crypto perspective. Again, for a company, this is not the first question. I don't say it's the wrong question, but it's not the first one. When they really know what they want to do with blockchain, and they know that they want to use Unibright Framework, then the questions, oh my God, how do we get these tokens into the platform, can be solved in a, say, 4-hour workshop, and we will explain them, okay, we will buy the tokens at the current price, then we will send you an invoice, so you don't have to do anything with crypto or Cryptopia or Liquid or any other exchange, and then you can just use our framework for years. So this is an easy task compared to doing the actual project.
So, Stefan, are you saying that if you're a business, you don't have to actually engage in the token itself, and that you do it all internally for them, and that the businesses you essentially utilize fiat? Is that what you're saying?
We could do it, but of course, if a company is that far ahead compared to other companies that they already know how all this crypto stuff works, then we're happy to not do it. But it's an additional service we could offer to help them to manage that token stuff, of course. Just like when you sell a new car, and the only question of the consumer is, oh my God, how do I get at the gas station, and how does this fuel thing work? Of course, when I sell you a car for $20,000, then I will go with you to the gas station for one time and show you how to use it. it's good for my business because I sold one more car.
Sure. And the only reason why I ask is because, once again, the community do ask these questions. And one of the things we do hear consistently, not just in the crypto space, is, once again, if you have a functioning fiat system, it's very difficult for a lot of people to understand why make the change into a token, which is essentially, as you said, a redeemable voucher. When the question is often posed, wouldn't the fiat system simply work?
Yeah, of course it would work. That's not the question.
It works since 2011 on our platform.
Right.
Never
but I mean, respectfully though, it is the question. You know, that's what people are trying to understand is what's the value add of the voucher, as opposed to just simply doing it because you're not a blockchain.
Yeah. First of all, it's, as I put, it's a very elegant way of doing the whole invoicing when we have the token, and it's a great way of knowing how many customers we have in the framework, and then we can leverage like how many processing power we need. It's a great measurement we can use, an automatically measurement, and we have smart contracts where we can automatically send the tokens from one customer to us or the other way around. It's something that is greatly integrated in the blockchain technology, so we don't have to use like bank transfers which take days. So if you have a use case where we want to transfer somehow some money, we of course take cryptocurrencies. And so we can transfer Unibright tokens as well as a voucher to use the framework to other companies. Of course, it's just all built into the blockchain technology. But you're completely right. Of course, this could be set up with the fiat approach too, and other companies might do this. But our idea is to be completely blockchain centric and do everything with blockchain. And staying in this picture, I guess it's very consistent to do so.
Yeah, and I think it's also a legal argument to say that it's a financing instrument. So of course we could have printed vouchers with our printer. Like one page gives you, I don't know, one connection with the Unibright framework, and then we'll have this pack of paper and go out and sell it to people so that they can sell it to the enterprises. But then we would have to face that somebody just could copy it, or somebody could lose it, or somebody just reprint it with another value, and we don't know it. So that's what blockchain technology, and that's what tokens bring. Yeah, it's very hard to simulate another token, because we know our token is the UBT token. It has one address. We know there are 150 million tokens available, not one single more, and that's a very secure way of pre-financing a company and be sure that it's really your voucher that is used and not another one.
Right. Well, that makes it clear. So in that sense, Stefan, is it fair to use the analogy or to just presuppose that when we talk about vouchers, you could almost argue that it's a kind of utilito currency, an internal one that the ecosystem of Unibright utilizes as a means of value?
Well, I think these terms are so differently understandable. So, for example, to give you the perspective on the German government, we of course had to keep up to the German regulatories, being a German company. Then they do not use the term of currency, but of e-money. So for them, it was important to understand, is Unibright e-money or not? And of course, we had to build our token and the complete token launch in a way that it's not considered to be e-money, and that's what the current state of the Unibright token is. So if you ask me, is it a currency or not? I don't know. It depends on the definition of the word currency in a specific regulatory environment.
Right. And gentlemen, how do you cope with that? That was the segue. So well done introducing this idea. How do you cope with all these different jurisdictions globally? How are you satisfying the requirements, let's say, for example, the SEC, or, you know, you're based in Europe. You clearly want to build this globally. How are you going and how are you managing all of these complexities?
Yeah, we got great lawyers, I think, a lot of them. For all the jurisdictions we sold the token to and we make business in. It's just something that is out of our hands because it's a very specialized knowledge, and it's knowledge still evolving around these whole crypto, pseudo crypto and utility token thing. It's just something we have to buy in and to, of course, look at with our lawyers.
And it's the same with the auditing. I think we are not relying on an existing regulatory environment where we could have a checklist like, okay, we did this right, we are a utility token. It's the other way around. Yeah. We do proposals and we get opinions from lawyers, and then the regulatory entities, they deal with it. So we are the ones who are actually driving that process of building up a regulatory environment. It's right. Projects like us. So if we do another interview 1 year from now, I bet there will be some points that we then notice we shouldn't have done 2 years before, just because there was no law available, and we did as good as we could. But perhaps when we want to do an ICO in 2020, it will be completely different. Perhaps.
Well, let's talk about compliance measures in Europe, for example, because we hear about the SEC, the reach it has, particularly when there's US investors involved. Are you compliant? Are you following all the regulations in your region of the world? And if you want to build out, let's say, into the US, how are you really addressing the current statements that the SEC are releasing with regard to ICOs generally?
Yeah.
I'm not a legal expert, so I would ask our lawyers how to do it, of course.
But I can tell you that we are legally perfectly fine. We are in touch with the German regulators, and we've been a showcase tool for them on how to do it right. And we are fine here. And looking at the US and the SEC, we've done everything that was needed at the time of the ICO and afterwards. So we are completely relaxed for the things the SEC is doing now, like going after some ICOs that didn't do what was needed.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's where I was going with that.
But it's
so we
nothing
don't have to fear anything out of that direction.
Right, and I appreciate that as well, because obviously people are concerned about, STOs coming, securitizations, and claims that ICOs are somehow not relevant, when in fact the argument you're presenting clearly is you are compliant and you're doing everything you can. Let's talk about business, though, for a moment with regard to building. Talk us through some of the means in which, or the vision you have to build this out from, I guess, the German position out into Europe. What's the strategy there to build Unibright out?
Yeah.
First of all, we deal with world concerns. So when we are with world companies, so the companies we've been approached by so far may be based in Germany and residing near Frankfurt. It's a great local position we have, because it's easy to meet them face to face. But if they do business, they do worldwide business. I think there is nearly no industry left in this world where you can face a German company that only has German or European reach. So, for example, when talking with Lufthansa about potential blockchain use cases, of course, Lufthansa is a German company, but the processes are worldwide, and you have to deal with worldwide economies.
Yeah.
So it's not a disadvantage to start from the country where you're residing in, as long as the companies you're approaching are active in the complete world.
Right, and clearly you're doing that.
Yeah, and from a business perspective, of course, we will have 1 or 2 pilot customers in the very near future, and they will be German companies, as it's the easiest way to go. And for us, we know a lot of them for years now. And of course, these projects will have a huge part of consultancy services too from our side. Like, for example, doing the token handling, as Stefan mentioned, or the general, getting into thinking about blockchain and what it means, and all this decentralized thinking compared to the centralized one. So of course, we will do some bootstrapping here. And our idea is to come up with the pilot customers, have great success stories out, studies on what you can do. So we will select the right clients, and we will select those that show the features that Unibright or blockchain can bring out, like building ecosystems, for example. It's a huge thing. We're talking with another company, having a complete system where you integrate your suppliers and your consumers, you use tokenization and a tokenized economy. It's a great thing. It will take a few months, but we'll come up with a success story along with it, and a lot of media appearances, so we can showcase what blockchain technology is able to do.
Sure.
So about promoting the technology itself too.
Right, and what about the team as well, Marten? Obviously, you have, from the outset, had some very skilled members of your team. You've obviously needed to build that out as you've progressed. How is the team going? What's the size of your team? And I'd like to talk also about your advisors and your ambassadors after that.
Yeah,
perhaps one by one.
Yeah, we've got a great team at first, and it's still the same people we started with, and it's been extended, especially around developers, and we've got a decentralized team of developers situated in different countries and greatly managed by Stefan most of the time. So it's fine here, and we've got the possibility to scale up and down the team as we go. So we can even say, oh, we want to look more into this technology, or completely have a new idea about another blockchain protocol. So we are quite flexible in scaling up. And we are around 32, I guess, at the moment. If you're looking for numbers.
Oh, well, that's just, so you've grown and you're continually growing.
Yes, and it's also important the example was when there's another protocol, then of course we would like to have perhaps a developer looking into it, but also one guy from the marketing team, because they should see how well known is this new protocol, and could we perhaps gain some marketing exchange from both projects. So it's not that classical business like we perhaps did in our consulting company, where you hire one specific guy to do one thing, and then just you sell him to the next client, and he brings you money, so to say. It's really to have a team of early adopters that are willing to dive into new technologies literally every second week.
Right.
And that's what we are very happy to have. We have great minds in our team, not only on the developer side, who are really willing to pick all this up in this very early stage of a new technology.
Yeah, you shouldn't miss the chance to mention our ambassadors.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, our ambassadors. First of all, they are a great bunch of people I'd like to thank. They are just emerged from our community, people that were very active around Unibright and about the whole blockchain scene. They are just believers in blockchain and in our framework. And they put so much time and effort in promoting the whole technology and finding or coming up with new ideas, what we can do and where we should look into, just without any financial interest. They're just doing it. And they are such a strong base for our project. And that's why we have our own group where we talk with them and do some events, and we want to make it even stronger and do marketing together with those guys.
Right, so just to clarify, so I just want to interject. So your ambassadors are unpaid, they're volunteers to support Unibright.
Mm-hmm.
That's really commendable that you've managed to achieve that, and also to all those ambassadors, because that's very rare in blockchain. Being someone who's not paid as well, I think that it genuinely is a very rare gesture of interest.
There are different roles in the ambassador team. So, for example, our ambassador manager, Ruud, he's part of the core team, and of course he's paid for the services he provides. But the ambassadors were, some of them approached us, but some of them were also, after they approached us, we noticed them that they were the ones, for example, in the Telegram group, who put a lot of hard, tough, and critical questions, but who also were able to put the answers in their words and then explain it to other people. And I think that's the most important thing, because you have different perspectives, you have different kind of people, to have different interests. Somebody perhaps is a pure crypto investor, another one has a technical background, and you have to address them in different manners and give different answers so that they understand. And that's what the ambassadors really help, because they all bring their own experience in, and then perhaps they explain the Unibright framework a little bit different than we do, and suddenly new people understand what we are actually doing, and it's easier for all of them. So that's for me, it's the most amazing part of the ambassador thing.
It's really great that you're acknowledging that. I actually haven't seen that in any other company, quite sincerely. Let's talk about your advisors for a moment. I noticed you have quite a few. Dash is one of them. We're friends, so I mentioned him. But I wanted to ask generally, what do your advisors do? Because many different projects overuse the term, and many of them are just simply networking to facilitate in the ICO, then they leave. What do your advisors actually do?
Okay, of course, you have to see it from advisor to advisor. Everyone is doing something different, but you're right. It's not that the most of them are involved in the daily work. It's more like having strategic talks every few weeks, or they coming up with great input when they have great input at that very moment. It's more about hints like, look at this general development or this protocol coming up, or what about I've been approached by this company, they want to know something about blockchain, and then you get connected or so. It's much more about the long-term or mid-term development of the company.
Yeah. And there are also dedicated roles within these, or different roles in that advisors group. So some of them we know for years, and they are also part of our consulting network, so to say. And it might be that we just meet them because of another project, and then we get into talks again, and then we also talk about Unibright. And there are other advisors that are mainly advisors on how to successfully build an ICO, and it's quite natural that their main impact was doing the ICO. And there are also advisors that know what we are doing, and they, so to say, screen the market, and it might be that they don't come back to us for weeks, and then suddenly they have like 3 contacts in 1 week. So it's more it's not that tightly coupled to the daily work as Marten.
Right. Well, thank you again for explaining those differences between the ambassador and the advisor. Now, obviously, there's a lot happened. Gentlemen, in given time, is there anything that either of you would like to say as a final address? Stefan, perhaps with you. I mean, there's so much that you do as the CTO. What would you like to say to the people with regard to a final comment on Unibright and what you're trying to build?
Yes, I think I want to put the main learning that we had during the last weeks, that we want not only to offer a framework and a product, but we also want to be the ones who bridge the gap of adoption. So we will not only offer a Unibright framework, but also blockchain consulting to really explain and help companies with the advantages of blockchain first, and then selling our product. That's the main learnings we had during the last weeks. And I think compared to our interview half a year ago, that's also the main difference of our business, that we do not only sell a framework, but we also want to offer these consulting services to get things going.
Yeah. Right. What about you, Marten? What would you like to add to that statement about you're not just simply, a service, but you're also providing products, but you're also providing for the consultancy. You're providing for that auto shop, a complete package of a suite of options. Everything's there for you to come in, build a car, and leave with a great model to hit the autobahn. What's more than that?
Yeah, but I'd like to emphasize the point too, as Stefan mentioned, because it's such an important one. And I think it's very important for the people out there to understand blockchain development in general. Like, we have these 2 groups of companies at least, or 2 groups of customers, and they are the ones that still need some consultancy services. That are, let's say, half a year or a year away from setting alive a project, that need to have this consultancy about thinking how to set up this process and how to make use of this great technology. But I'd like to think about how it was with every other technology, that we had this phase in time where everybody thought, oh, it's much too complicated, it's too expensive. And if you look back, like virtualization or the internet coming up, or mobile devices, or so many other technologies, it was always the same. We always had this point where companies were still, they weren't far enough to start the project. They needed some little push. But then there will be this time when everybody is using it, and then you will look back and say, oh, it was clear this technology brings so much new features in it. And that's why we set up this another branch of Unibright with the solution or consulting idea, where we help companies making their own visions. And apart from this, we have the product that is nearly ready, which is great, and it can be used in a few weeks or month, or it can be used by a company in a year when they really start making use of blockchain technology.
Absolutely. So essentially there's 2 parts, just to recap. Fundamentally, you're looking at a consultancy service. People can walk in, learn, and be educated, really understand how they can customize through Unibright, and then they can start to use a suite of options to really benefit for their business, to become more productive, more efficient for the future. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. It's always exciting to hear about business-driven projects, business-centric projects that aren't always just about things that are blockchains, but utilizing blockchain to really benefit and impact on what matters most, and that is essentially tapping into those business markets of now and the future, because so much of it isn't tapped at all with regard to blockchain. So thank you to the CEO, thank you Marten, Jung, for your time. Thank you to the CTO also. Thank you Stefan, Schmidt, for your time also. Hopefully all of you have learned a bit more about and been updated in what Unibright stands for and what they are trying to do. Thank you guys.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having us, Brad. Great interview.
You're welcome.